if able to fill that up. But they had great matches and great concepts going on around 1991 and even 1992. And the Dangerous Alliance in late 1991 really solidified what was missing in the company ever since Ric Flair and the Horsemen split, because you didn't have that faction. You look back in WCW during its early years, when you have factions and stuff going, whether it's J-Tex or whether it's the Horsemen or whatever, a good heel faction in WCW meant that at least there was a lot of good stuff going on in the company. And you had that in late 1991 and throughout 1992 with the Dangerous Alliance, with those guys really together and really kicking tail match after match after match. Well, some of the famous, matches occurred in Dangerous Alliance history. I guess you really have to start, really at the beginning, right after the Sting and Rick Rude match. I think you got to really look at the same night that Rick Rude won the title was the United States title, was the same night that the natural Dustin Rhodes and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat entered the fray against these guys. Every heel group has to have really good singles guys, and whether singles or tag team baby faces, to really solidify that, that heel versus face dynamic that is so prevalent in wrestling and so successful. They won the tag team titles from the Enforcers on that show. And eventually they would lose those championships, to Beautiful Bobby and Arn Anderson. Now that's a dream tag team, and they basically teamed up more than Larry and Arn did during the Dangerous Alliance run. And that was a pretty good tag team. It was a tag team that I think a lot of fans at the time said that, I wonder if this is really going to work, but it turned out to be one of the best things ever in terms of tag team wrestling in WCW. I have to give the Enforcers their due. Tag team of the year 1991. However, Bobby and Arn, they had wrestled each other so many times. Midnight Express versus Tony and Arn, and other combinations throughout the years. They knew each other in and out, and it was like they had been teaming together for 20 years. And they were a great tag team, former tag team champions in WCW with Dangerous Alliance. So you got the World Tag Team titles now on board. Stunning Steve's the television champion. He has a tremendous angle with Barry Windham. Barry Windham would eventually win the WCW World Television Championship, ending Steve Austin's huge reign as the television champion, leading towards that awesome match at WrestleWar during War Games. But he became the television champion, and he'll eventually lose it back to Steve Austin. So that was another angle that was propped up. Rick Rude and Ravishing Rick Rude and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat had tremendous battles for the United States Championship, whether it be their epic battle at Super Bowl II, in which Paulie dangerously dresses up as the Ninja, Ricky's Ninja, and turns his back on him and hits him with the telephone, and Rude escapes with the win. Or whether it be their epic Beach Blast Iron Man, so to speak, match that they had, which was fantastic from top to bottom. Either way you look at it, 30-minute Iron Man match. Either way you look at it, they had Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Rick Rude set the bar for a lot of great stuff that would happen between the Dangerous Alliance and the heel and the faces that they would come up against. And it wasn't, Dustin Rhodes was a part of it, as well as I mentioned with Ricky Steamboat, but he was also a part of it with Barry Windham. They were really a tag team as well when Barry was out with that injury to his arm, and that happened at Chamber of Horrors as well in October of 1991, where the Enforcers just slammed the door on Barry's hand in that famous car episode with Cactus Jack also out there during the early hours of that event, prior to the event, with Eric Bischoff out there. A lot of great stuff happened, and another thing that I can very vividly remember were the great promos about Paulie Dangerously at the time. After listening to him cut these awesome promos with the group behind him, you start to realize that he was really being misused in WCW for way too long. I think the Dangerous Alliance angle, should have come along a long time before it actually did in WCW. I think it was decent timing in late 1991, but I don't think it's something to me that probably should have came about 3 or 4 months early, and when WCW really needed it, because they went a couple of months without really doing anything, and they still had the guys in place to do it. Maybe there was probably some backstage issues, like Rick Rude wasn't signed yet in WCW, so let's wait till he gets signed, or it was an idea that just came up out of the blue and WCW went with it. Either way, I find it ironic that this was the time the Dangerous Alliance really took off, was the time that Jim Herd got fired from WCW. I don't know if there's any coincidence with that, but I thought that was interesting. And also you had Dusty booking at the time. So you add all those things together, it's a pretty cool dynamic for World Championship Wrestling. But probably the most memorable match in the Dangerous Alliance's history occurred at this specific pay-per-view right here, WrestleWar in 1992. Yes, peeps and peepettes, I do have the VHS. I watch it from time to time. You got Sting Squadron with the likes of Nikita Koloff, Sting, the current world heavyweight champion, after defeating Lex Luger at Super Brawl 2 before he took off. You got Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and you got the soon-to-be Unified World Tag Team Champions and the Natural Dustin Rhodes and the current World Television Champion at the time, Big Barry Windham, who defeated Steve Austin, as I mentioned earlier. And you got all the members of the Dangerous Alliance: Bobby Eaton, Larry Zbyszko, Arn Anderson, stunning Steve Austin, and ravishing Rick Rude, current United States Heavyweight Champion, with Paulie at the helm. And it was just a tremendous matchup that was really, in my opinion, the last great War Games matchup of the early 90s, until you saw the NWO come to fold in around 1996 when they took on the Horsemen, Sting, and Lex Luger. But this is something I think is a rare rarity, and it was really one of those last great early WCW/NWA War Game match. And of course, this is the last WrestleWar 92. But a short story in regards to this particular WrestleWar in 1992, the Dangerous Alliance. It was just perfect it was just the right timing, because once again, without the Horsemen there, you needed a great heel group to really pull off the War Games, and you had a great heel group in the Dangerous Alliance. You had tremendous faces in the likes of the Sting Squadron, all of which had a history, except for Nikita Koloff for sakes, but they all seem to have had a history with the Dangerous Alliance, so it all worked out and made great television. And to make a long story short, what happened was really the foundations of the end of how we knew the great Dangerous Alliance was at the time and would be in the future. Now, what basically happened in this May 1992 pay-per-view at the War Games in 1992, Sting Squadron versus Dangerous Alliance, the key thing that happened was towards the end, where Sting was in a confrontation with Bobby Eaton, and all of a sudden Larry Zbyszko walks over, and he literally takes this steel pipe, so to speak. It's just a huge steel pipe that connects to the turnbuckle. So Bobby Eaton took the entire turnbuckle off, and Larry Zbyszko grabbed it with the pipe. It's this huge steel bar that connects to the ring post. It's a huge steel bar that connects the turnbuckle pad to the actual ring post. And many fans may not pay attention to it, but it's there. It holds up all those ring pads together, turnbuckle pads. But Larry Zbyszko took that and accidentally hit Bobby Eaton with it, and Bobby Eaton was supposed to hold Sting really tightly. The Sting somehow escaped, and it hit Bobby right on the arm, and Sting took advantage of it, put him in a reverse arm bar and standing arm bar, and Bobby Eaton gave up, according to Nick Patrick, the head referee. And Larry Zbyszko, of course, got blamed. He got ousted out of the Dangerous Alliance, and this is really the free fall of the group, because soon thereafter, a few months after that, you had Medusa and Rick Rude split from Paulie Dangerously. And you really just had Paulie managing Stunning Steve, and really not doing that much. And long story short, You had Medusa in an angle with Paul Lee. Paul Lee calls her out really, really bad. Really, a lot of derogatory adjectives toward her, and that really blows up. And they have a little angle with each other, and it just went on and on and on, and it really didn't amount to much because, like most things in WCW, they built it up so well, but they really couldn't finish it off. So, in essence, the Dangerous Alliance just slipped away, into the blue, so to speak, never to be heard again until it was reformed with the third faction of the group, in ECW with the Dark Patriot, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, the Magnificent Don Morocco, and also the late great Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. When all four of those guys came together with Paul E. Dangerously again to form the group, but that was very short-lived, and it was not necessarily extreme. It was Eastern Championship Wrestling at the time. Eventually would be Extreme Championship Wrestling. But, to me, when I think of the decline of the Dangerous Alliance, I like to say to myself, too soon. Just way too soon to end something that was so good and so entertaining for several months in WCW, almost going on for a year. It really wasn't the same because you had Arn Anderson split away from the group. He's just doing single stuff, and right before he eventually goes to the stud stable with Colonel Robert Parker, but he was doing nothing for a good while in WCW. Larry Zbyszko really fell off, and he became just an announcer / commentator, and before actually going back and wrestling for time to time, becoming the World Television Champion during the mid-90s, I believe around 1993 or 1994, he won that belt, which was a big deal in WCW at the time. Bobby Eaton really doesn't do anything until he is with Lord Steven Regal, and they form the Blue Bloods, Lord Robert Earl Eaton. I like the Blue Bloods. That may be an addition for the Secluded Paradyme down the road, the evolution of that. But to me, Bobby basically spent about 2 years doing nothing after leaving the Dangerous Alliance. His career really wasn't the same after that. The Dangerous Alliance, in essence, was really the last really big thing he did in his career. And for the most part, Steve Austin really became something I don't think he wanted to become. He became a mechanic in WCW, and for several years he really didn't do anything. For several months he didn't do anything until he formed an alliance with Brian Pillman, and they became the Hollywood Blondes, one of the greatest tag teams I ever saw. The second reincarnation of the Blondes, the first reincarnation of the Blondes, the second version of that group. Great gimmick, and it really helped re-energize his career in WCW before they eventually, shot them down because it was actually over. And Rick Rude, as I mentioned, was the United States Heavyweight Champion for a very long time, all the way into early 1993. And eventually, he'll become the International Heavyweight Champion, become the World Champion. The International. First it was the NWA World Champion, he became the International Champion. Long story about that. I should do a Secluded Paradyme on that alone. But, for the most part, he was really starting to get that high, status again. He was about to reach that potential that a lot of people had saw with him in becoming the world's heavyweight champion. And I say potential, I don't say he didn't have the skills beforehand. Potential amongst the higher-ups in WCW, how they saw him. Basically, he was becoming a guy who you could tell, if he had stayed healthy, probably would have gotten a crack at that World's Heavyweight Championship, because he was facing Flair, he was facing Sting, a lot of the top names in WCW at the time. He was facing a lot of good competitors, the Bulldog, everybody. But he eventually got injured, and his back just his back and his knees just really bothered him. He had a career-ending neck injury, I believe, in Japan. So, and there's a lot of bad things that was happening to Rick Rude that really kept him from going to that next level. Like Steve Austin, a lot of the politics and stuff like that. But with Rude, it was more so the injuries that held him back. So, and Paulie left WCW in late 1992 and went to ECW, reformed the Dangerous Alliance. Really didn't pan out to what he thought it would be. And after Eddie Gilbert left as the booker of Eastern Championship Wrestling, he goes on to fame as a really big figurehead